Okay, first and foremost, let me say thank you to everyone that has joined us. I am, of course, Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, Super District 7 Commissioner here in DeKalb County, Georgia. But I am a public servant to all. And I'd like to thank first and foremost our guests for joining us this evening, taking the time out of their busy schedules. This evening, we are having a town hall that covers our essential departments. Receiving the inordinate amount of emails that I do on a daily basis, to ensure that everyone within the county understands what services we are providing at this time. Of course, as we face not only a global pandemic, but national social unrest. So we have a lot of ground to cover this evening. Many of our department heads have given us wonderful presentations, and we are going to ensure by the time we have completed this call that you understand during COVID what services are provided, how to reach our agencies, and we've also received very good questions that we will ensure we cover throughout the course of the town hall. At this time, let's move into the introductions, Allison. And we will start first. I will only give, due to time constraint, we will begin with only the name and title of each individual that will be a part of the town hall this evening. The first person that we have is Mr. Reggie Wells. Well, we have Mr. Andrew Baker's slide first. Of course, Mr. Baker is the Director of Planning and Sustainability. Under his purview falls everything from land disturbances to building permits and planning. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Baker. And Allison, I will allow you to roll the slides and just do introductions from there. Next, we have Mr. Tim Hardy. He is our Deputy Director of Code Compliance Administration. I would say that he is probably one of the busiest men in the county. And thank you so much for taking your time, Mr. Hardy. I appreciate you and enjoy working alongside you. Next, we have Ms. Tracy Hutchinson. Of course, Ms. Hutchinson is the Sanitation Division and Beautification Unit Director. And she also, I'm very proud of those who I work alongside here in the county. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, Ms. Hutchinson. And of course, Mr. Alan Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell is the Director of Community Development, and he works in a variety of capacities, including economic development. He works with seniors and building. So thank you so much. We'll allow you each to speak a little bit later and go through your slides. And we also have Mr. Damon Scott. Mr. Scott is the Director of Human Services, and both youth and senior services fall under his purview. We also have this evening joining us Mr. Reginald Wells, and of course he is the Director of Watershed Management. And thank you so much, Mr. Wells. We have Mr. Zach Williams. Zach is our COO, our Chief Operating Officer here in DeKalb County, and works directly with the administration out of the CEO's office. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. And last but not least, we have Ms. Debra DeBerry. And Ms. DeBerry is our Clerk of Superior Court. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And we are going to begin the discussion this evening with you, Ms. DeBerry. I would like for you at this time to tell us a little bit, because I consider you the gatekeeper to the courts. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what you do. And I'd also like for you to tell us what services you provide and give us an update on where you are at this time in providing services during COVID-19.
Thank you for inviting me to this virtual town hall, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, and it's great to see a lot of my colleagues on this call as well. Zach, we see each other more frequently on other calls, but what the clerk's responsibilities are, as a constitutional officer, I work independently based on the Constitution and serve as the checks and balance system in the justice system. I handle all of your official records, both civil, criminal, real estate, adoptions. And so I'm your record keeper. In addition to that, I am a federal passport agent. I issue notary commissions, trade names, limited liability partnerships. We handle all of adoptions, appeals to the appellate court and the Supreme Court, all felony criminal indictments, accusations. We handle the sentencing, the Department of Corrections, where you go when you leave here. We all civil matters, both domestic and general civil. So any major lawsuits in the amount of more than $15,000 comes into Superior Court. We all divorces, child support, name changes, legitimations, anything practically that has to do with family, domestic issues. And our second largest, unfortunately, case type are protective orders. So all protective orders start with us. We go into court, we facilitate advocates, and that's a pretty big undertaking. Yeah. Just protective orders, stalking orders, which have gone up significantly lately. We also handle
And
real estate. Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to interrupt a little bit here because as it relates to your office, we started to have the conversation before the conversation, and not much has changed because of what you do. Now, I know that at this time, there are, shall I say, moratoriums or freezes on evictions and certain things that would pass through your office. But overall, I want people to understand that you are working each and every day. So tell us a little bit about that so that they understand, you know, the processes that are taking place right now.
Well, the physical office, and for all intents and purposes, the physical courthouse is closed. We are not prepared yet, and this is based on the Supreme Court's judicial emergency order and our local Chief Judge Asha Jackson's order to extend the judicial emergency through July 12th at 11:59. We will open, our current plan is to open July 13th. Things will look different. Jury service may not happen in July, and that's one of our biggest backlogs right now, is having jury trials. We are doing many hearings, bond hearings, for example. We don't want folks that don't belong in jail to stay in jail. So we are doing a lot of those kinds of hearings virtually and remotely. We've set up a couple of courtrooms at the jail. And so via Zoom, we've had to have some of the uniform Superior Court rules amended, which the Supreme Court did, so that we could actually do this. Because the law prior to that required that the defendant had the right to physically face accusers and the judge. And so and they also agreed to a Zoom plea. We're doing pleas, arraignments, sentencing, revocations, in and out of custody hearings now. Bond hearings, of course. Protective orders, we're still handling on an emergency basis. While the hours are shorter and it looks a little differently, that is still happening. You can still file electronically any criminal matters, civil matters, domestic matters, and all real estate can be electronically transmitted now. And if folks go to my website, there are links, there's a contact us tab that you can contact the various departments within my office, and you'll get a response immediately. and that's how we're communicating with people. There are some folks that actually we set appointments for them to come into the office on a one-on-one scenario. Notaries, for example, we had close to 700 notaries that were expiring in April, and then another 500 in May. So we had to figure out a way to start getting the tolling orders extended them, but people may not remember that. And notary commissioned folk don't like using their notary past its expiration date, even though the law allows it for now. So we started doing mail-in renewals, and now we're scheduling new applications for new notaries, and we have 700 of those right now that we're trying to schedule. And those have for a new notary, and they have to be sworn in. So we are now going to do mass swearing ins via Zoom. I'm going to try and do 20 at a time. So that we can get them facilitated. So some judges are now handling adoptions. That's a little different because the law does not permit any electronic activity as it relates to adoptions. So we're trying to work through that right now. Jury trials, as I said, they are not anticipated to begin not even in July. We're working on that. But DeKalb orders 1,000 jurors at a time. We have all these courtrooms going, and there is just not space to do social distancing unless we alternate. So that's part of the challenge around the jury trials. Even just on a pre-COVID, on a normal day, I get about 500 people in my office. That's got to change. So we're working through screening processes, PPE, the whole social distancing, how we handle a defendant that might present at the courthouse and has a fever. We can't send them to jail, and we can't charge them with a failure to appear. So there are a lot of those kinds of things that have to work out. Evictions are not happening. You can file for an eviction, but they are not happening now. And I just got a text from Judge Burl Anderson, the chief magistrate, and she says that there will be an announcement weeks in advance, and they can call legal aid and questions about CARE Act. So the CARE Act actually prohibits evictions right now. Right. And so, no, we're not doing them. They can be filed, but that's not happening. I am getting a lot of requests from the public wanting deeds and plat information. Apparently, since people have been at home, they're building fences. They want to do things in their yard, and they need to confirm what their boundaries are. All of those records are kept with me as well.
And, let me ask this question because, most of us are seeing that, and I'm very grateful to see that in DeKalb County, our numbers are not rising as quickly as other areas, but overall, we're seeing a trend here. The numbers of COVID-19 known cases are increasing. So absolutely. Even with the lifting, shall I say, of, on July 12th, do you believe the Supreme Court will extend the right for you to work remotely and, no longer require or have the ability for an individual, and it seems like this is a consensual thing, to face their accuser so that you are able to move forward with using digital means to hold court cases?
We have a courthouse task force, and all the offices, we work very well together. The Supreme Court really doesn't have a say in that part. Can we work virtually or remotely, as long as it doesn't interfere with the rule? And so our plan, and we have our reopen plan in place, and it will be very different. So I think one of the reasons the numbers are not terribly escalating is because DeKalb County, the courts, the administration has taken this very seriously and did not rush to open until we're ready to continue to protect the public. And that's what we are doing in the courthouse as well. So when we open, for example, I'm only bringing back 50% of my staff. The other 50% will continue to work remotely. Many of the things we've had a lot of lessons learned also in this process, that there are many functions that we can do remotely and it actually works better. There are some areas we're even getting higher productivity. So on the return, our biggest concern right now is how to hold jury trials. And those are the ones that's backing up. Evictions are backing up. They have thousands of them.
Yes.
And certainly that's going to be a push when we come back. But we do want to ensure and assure the public that they can feel confident that when they do return to the courthouse, that we do daily sanitizing, which is a big thing. We have some areas where the public, for example, in our deed room, we do have a few people coming in daily. In the probate area, emergency guardianships are happening. Marriages are marriage license are being issued, and concealed carry weapon license are also being issued by appointment only. And I am doing passports now by appointment only. The U.S. State Department had declared an emergency, and so we weren't sending any unless it was on an emergency basis. So during COVID, I probably completed 10 emergency passports. Now they're starting to bring a few people in. What used to take 2 weeks, though, is now taking 6 to 8 weeks and even longer. So we are processing passports. We never required an appointment before, but we have to now. Typically, passports are done by families, and they'll come 5 or 6 together. So we can't have more than that because of space and social distancing requirements. Masks are also required now to enter the courthouse.
Okay. And I thank you so much. I'm sure there will be other questions, but thank you for giving everyone an overview, because the magnitude, Ms. DeBerry, of what happens in your office is always startling as we start to go down the list. I think, folk don't understand that, constitutional officers, you really have an entire agency over there, so to speak, that you manage, and you do a fine job. So thank you so much. And
thank you.
Oh, no, well, thank you. Now, the next person we have up, I think, is Mr. Wells over at Watershed. So Mr. Wells, I know you prepared an entire presentation. So I'm going to let you move into that presentation so that you can walk everyone through what you've brought here. And afterwards, we will, we did receive questions, and we will field questions at the end. So thank you so much. Let's go into Mr. Wells's presentation.
Good evening, and thank you for having me, Commissioner Johnson. I wanted to make sure I use this time wisely, and I wanted to hit some key highlights on how to ultimately reach out to us for any needs. If I can go to the first slide. First and foremost, I want to make sure the public have our 24-hour customer service number for any water or sewer system emergencies. If they see any water main break, water running down the street, water shooting in the air, a hydrant hit with water spraying everywhere, or a manhole overflowing, or any of those things, or they just don't have water in their home, any of those type issues, that if they would immediately call 770-270-6243, or they could actually email us at DeKalbWaterOps@DeKalb County, GA. And that's a 24-hour number. We have live dispatchers there to actually capture the calls, the details, so we can dispatch staff. We are a 24/7 operation, so we always are manning that number. Next slide, please. Outside of that, usually what we're known most for is water billing. So all remaining slides will be as it relates to that. First and foremost, we do have a specific call center for water billing, customer service. It's actually open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We typically have lobby hours, but due to COVID-19, at this time, those hours aren't available. Next slide, I'll actually be able to provide that phone number for you guys. Next slide. So here, one of the services that we are contacted about quite a bit is new service. You can set that up by email as well at newwaterservice@DeKalb County, GA, or by phone at our customer service number, 404-378-4475. We do accept those applications in person at our customer service Jordan Lane location, which is located at 774 Jordan Lane, Suite 200, Decatur, Georgia, 30033. And because of COVID, we are facilitating that by way of Dropbox, if you will, and then we'll process that application and be in contact with the actual customer. Next slide, please. So, of course, the most common question related to new service is how long it takes to actually get the water service turned on. We typically have a 5-day turnaround for that. However, we have really been trying to prioritize those, and we typically can get them turned on in less than 3 business days. It just really depends on the demand, but we really do try to meet the needs of our customers based on the priority. Next slide, please. Of course, one of the main concerns also how to actually make payment. So you can actually make payment by calling 404-371-6294 or the 1-800-FREE 1-866-227-8924, or online. You can actually there's a portal at DeKalbCountyGA.gov, and of course we will accept payment by Dropbox at the Jordan Lane location, address mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. We are still able to provide services as it relates to billing questions, disputes, etc. We have a specific number for our customer assurance team. If there's a customer that wants to dispute a portion of their bill, they can actually call 404-371-3000, or they can email us at customerassurance@DeKalb County, GA. They'll actually be assigned a service rep, a case manager, that will follow up with them accordingly, depending upon their specific concern or need related to the dispute. Next slide, please. And I think this is probably the most important slide. If for whatever reason any of our customers just cannot pay their water bill, just have them reach out to us at any of those numbers, and we'll make some form of arrangement. But at any rate, we will not disconnect their water. The county is under a disconnection moratorium. The CEO has had that in place since he's come into office. So we will not disconnect for non-payment. And late fees during this time frame, they're suspended due to COVID to the end of this month, and that could very well be extended just depending upon policy updates, etc. Next slide, please. We do get common questions about pools this time of year. And if you are wanting to fill your pool, you may want to go to the website, DeKalb County GA, Watershed Management, filling pool, because there are some particular details that may be of interest to you. There's a different billing categories that you may benefit from. It's helpful if you contact us on the onset, and we can help you facilitate that. And last but not least, if any of our customers experience a leak on their actual property, which ultimately causes a bill spike, they can also contact us at our customer service number at 404-378-4475. And there are adjustments that are related to specific leaks. Once the repair has been made, we can assist them with adjustments so they don't have to pay a escalated bill as a consequence of that leak. And I believe that's the last slide, or frequently asked questions. If there are any questions, just let me know. I'll stand by.
Okay, thank you so much. There was one question that I did see come in for Watershed Management, and I'm going to go ahead and ask that question at this time. And it says, the CEO has acknowledged repeatedly over the last year that the county will not meet the mandates of the federal consent decree put in place a number of years ago, mandating improvements in the operation and management of the county's water system. What will be the consequences of the county's failure to meet the consent decree? What are the primary reasons the county failed to meet the requirements of the consent decree? And does the Watershed Management Division now have a plan in place to meet the requirements of the consent decree? And I'm also going to indulge our COO, Mr. Zach Williams, on this question as well. One of the things that I found, and I'll speak to that immediately, and I'll turn it over to you all to just take it home with fact, is that during the past 2 years, we have had the rainiest season ever. A lot of us, we oftentimes don't talk about the good because everyone is so busy talking about what they see. And often that's perpetuated through media, some justified, some not. But our current snap finger wastewater treatment facility, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on anything that I say, Mr. Wells and Mr. Williams, was constructed in 1972. That facility was in such bad need of updates. When we look at our sanitary sewer overflow and spill rate, the bulk of what we had experienced, and in many instances, the bulk of not being able to meet that consent decree was due to the confines of the weather and the experiences that we had. We have now in place measures, and we have agreed to a new deadline. And I'll allow both of you, and whomever wants to chime in, to speak as to what that is, because I'm very excited. We're going to meet it, and I want DeKalb County to also know that when the snap finger wastewater treatment facility is created, it will be the second largest wastewater treatment facility in the United States. At the time the plans were submitted, it was the largest. We will have something here in DeKalb that we can be proud of, and we will end these water and the sanitary sewer overflows. So Mr. Wells and Mr. Williams, I'll allow you to continue from there.
Thank you, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson. And I'll just start off. And again, Zach Williams, I'm the Chief Operating Officer. And the question with regard to our timeliness of the compliance with the original consent decree. It's an excellent question. It warrants discussion. What we would offer, though, is the original consent decree, which was conceived of back around 2007 or 2008, and then entered into, I believe, in 2011. It was based on accomplishing a $1.3 billion worth of work that, quite frankly, I don't know that the commission at that time, the staff at that time, and this precedes everyone who's participating in this call, had an exact idea of the severity of the need. You have a water and sewer system that goes back to the 30s, 40s, 50s, and you have pipes that have been in need of repair, in need of upsizing for decades. It was quite ambitious at the time, and it was logically so to be ambitious, but in retrospect, looking at the program that was laid out initially, without having vendors, contractors, and staffing in place immediately, which we did not, it was not going to be something that would be attainable in such a short time frame. Because as we have gone over the last number of years, there's been procedural matters and there's been issues with finding the severity of the problem that has required additional work. Where we are today, I think this last consent decree, the county has learned a lot. It has learned how to, first of all, move our process a lot faster, identify the problems a lot more quickly. And so by doing that, we're able to commit that in the extended timeline, the county will be able to accomplish the overall goals. So in looking back, I think the whole way it was set up, what we thought we could achieve, or the officials at that time thought they could achieve, was a little overly ambitious. I think we're much more realistic now, much more strategic now. The board, the CEO, the staff are all rowing in the same direction, and I'm confident that we're going to meet our future timeline.
Absolutely. And I will also say that, many of the change orders that we've seen associated with the project has a great deal to do with when it was conceptualized.
Sure.
Because back then there was a huge difference between practice and theory. Once things came into practice, in many instances, because of the length of time that it took for this to materialize, you were dealing with, in some instances, outdated plans. So there was necessity to go back in order to move forward. But I look forward to the day when we are complete, and I'm very confident too that we're going to meet the new timeline.
Right.
I'm going to take a point of privilege because there was one other question that was directly referenced to you, and it said, this question is, many municipalities across the country are have suffered an extremely adverse financial impact from COVID-19, resulting from a reduction in the sales taxes and general decline in economic activity. Although many companies are now starting to reopen and return to normal activity, does the county have an adequate financial cushion to sustain operations and service delivery until the economy improves to levels experienced prior to pandemic? And from a quantitative standpoint, by exactly how much have the county's major revenue sources declined since the COVID-19 pandemic? And I think it's still a little early on the question.
Yes, absolutely.
To answer, because we have not yet been totally assessing taxes. That will be felt a little bit later down the road.
Right.
The question also asks whether or not our bond rating would be
Yes.
affected.
Yes.
And at this point, and there is more, but I'm going to allow you to answer the questions if you will.
Thank you, Commissioner. And these are excellent questions, and something that any resident would want to be assured of and should be concerned with, and want to assure that we are on top of these issues. So the impacts of COVID-19 thus far, fortunately, have not been as dramatic for DeKalb County as many other municipalities, private institutions, the state. And to explain why, understand that DeKalb County, its sources of revenue, okay? It's just like any other business. We're a municipal corporation, right? And we rely not only on sales tax, but we rely on property tax, we rely on fines and fees, we rely on grants. And so we have a fairly balanced portfolio. And as a matter of fact, we're not so heavily dependent on sales tax, which is where the impacts have shown thus far. So if you look at certain other jurisdictions who are much more heavily dependent on sales tax, the impact to their overall fiscal operation is going to be more significant. So over the past couple of months, there has been a decline in sales tax, but understand that sales tax overall is maybe approximately 20% of our revenues. We anticipate, as much as probably a 12, maybe 15% decline in sales tax over the course of the year. There are other jurisdictions who would anticipate much more significant impact. In the month of March, I believe the decline was 18%. That's when COVID shutdowns were first beginning and felt. And in the month of April, I believe we were down about 4% or something like that, much less significant. And we are now getting lead indicators for May. So at the end of the day, we are managing, as you would expect us to, the impacts of COVID-19 on our overall revenues and our expenses. As a matter of fact, this past couple of weeks, we have directed all departments countywide to reduce their budgets by 5%. So if I was to give you what would the hard number be, it is approximately 5% of our overall operating budget that will be impacted. We are confident that we know exactly where we can find the revenue or the expenditures, eliminate certain expenditures. Quite frankly, there's a lot of things that we would have anticipated doing that we didn't. A lot of travel, a lot of training, those types of things. Maybe certain positions didn't go filled that we had anticipated because of COVID. Less use of fuel because we didn't have as many vehicles on the road. All of those things are part of how we have managed and are managing to address the downturn associated with COVID-19. So we feel as if what we're facing is very much manageable. We built this budget, quite frankly, anticipating a recession. In the fall, when we initially presented the budget, we used the analogy of the ants and the grasshopper, the old Aesop's fable, where we would ensure that we were the ants. We were storing away for what we anticipated being some inevitable economic downturn. We'd had essentially 10 years of growth. We could have never predicted it would be a global pandemic, but we did ensure that we had 2 months of a rainy day fund, so that if the county didn't receive one more dime, the county could run for 2 months without missing a beat, if you will. So
to that accord, Mr. Williams, I would like to say that I do give credit where it's due. And, for many years, DeKalb County had operated in a severe deficit.
That's correct.
So I do like to acknowledge that it has been under CEO Mike Thurman's administration and with his leadership and guidance that we are not now operating from that position of adversity and detriment that we often had. I've been very proud that now we have a commitment. We have funded cost of living allowances for our retirees. This was a practice that had not been done for, I believe, around 10 years.
Absolutely.
So we are moving progressively forward. And I'm very happy to see us in that position. Now, the last question that I'm going to ask in lieu of time, because I feel this, I'm not going to address issues of economic development here tonight. That's going to be a different town hall. But there is a question concerning, many of you may have received notification through newspaper or even in my newsletter that we are considering an increase in taxes. And there is a question here. I read recently that the county is planning an increase in property taxes. Can you confirm this is true? And what is the rationale for the increase?
Sure. Excellent question. So the way and it refers to the rollback rate, okay? And the way it works is each year, and this is required by state law in how we administer our overall tax digest. If the net amount of revenues that you would receive with the existing millage rate that you propose, which is kind of the what you multiply your tax burden net by to come up with a tax rate, would show that you would increase the amount of money coming in. Then it appears as if there is a tax increase. What is not accounted for in DeKalb County, and DeKalb County is one of the unique ones, is the EHOST, the Equalized Homestead Option Sales Tax, which in fact reduces the overall tax burden to individuals. And so we've put out literature trying to explain that, because it's kind of an archaic methodology that the state uses to make this calculation, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, because it does not account for the approximately $130 million or so of tax relief that the residents will in fact see. So overall, residents should anticipate a slight reduction in their taxes as opposed to a tax increase once you take into account the homestead, the equalized homestead option sales tax.
Okay, and thank you so much. And I'm going to move right along. And next up, we actually have Ms. Tracy Hutchinson. And of course, Ms. Hutchinson is in charge of the Sanitation Division along with Beautification. And Ms. Hutchinson, your slide will now come up, and we will allow you to speak to the audience as to what services are being provided during this time, if there are limited services as a result of COVID-19, and how people can reach your office if there is an issue. Thank you for joining us.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, for the invitation, and I'm so happy to be on the virtual town hall meeting tonight. And again, I am Tracy Hutchinson, the Director of Sanitation and Beautification. And as you know, the COVID-19 has impacted everyone. Sanitation, we have had no change in our services, which is really good for the residents. We are here to provide a service, and our weekly service is garbage recycling and yard debris. So we do encourage residents, though, to containerize the garbage due to, again, with all the COVID-19 going on, we need all garbage to be in bags. And if possible, we're asking residents to sanitize those garbage and recycling carts also, and also the yard trimming containers. Our employees are out there weekly trying to provide this service, but we really are asking the residents to, if they can, to make sure all garbage, when they put it in that roll cart, that it is in a bag. So what we have done is our lobby hour, so our lobby is closed right now, but our call center is still working. Our call center works from 7 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. And, of course, you can email us also. And then you can also mail in if you are requesting a roll cart, if you're a new resident or anything like that, you can also mail that information to us also. On Monday, we plan to install a drop box in front of the door, because we do have a lot of residents. Because we're out there working, they see our trucks. We have a lot of residents that are actually coming to the building pretty much on a daily basis. So to help with that, we're going to install a drop box at the front door. So we hope that residents will utilize that drop box too. So on Monday morning, we hope to have that installed at the front door. What I would like to also talk about is using our comprehensive website. We have an excellent website. We are constantly working on the website. When residents have requests for bulky items, which seems to be a lot of the requests that we are getting in. We have a lot of residents that are working from home remotely, and there's a lot of folks that are like, okay, I got some time, I'm at home, let me clean my garage or let me clean the basement up, and we understand that. So we have a lot of material on the ground. And if you can only imagine, you know, every week we service over 170,000 residents picking up their garbage, recycling, and yard debris. So the bulky items are not for the rear loader. The truck that comes in and pick up your recycling and your garbage is not that same truck to actually pick up the bulky items. That's a different set of fleet that actually comes behind that truck and pick those items up. And a lot of times we need for residents to call in, well, all the time, we need for residents to call in. If you have a bulky collection, please call in. You could call in to our telephone number, our call center, which is 404-294-2900. But I'm so happy to introduce that we have this service request, online service request. We just introduced it, and it's been working out really well. If you go to our website, you can actually request us to come out and do a review the pile for you, or, you know, again, we're asking residents also, you could take a picture of the pile and you could put it right in that app, and then it automatically comes to us. It's real-time data. We can look at your request in a matter of 2 minutes, but I think it's 5 minutes. When you upload it every 5 minutes, so that website is constantly being updated, or that app is constantly being updated. So we're happy to report that also. If residents request a upgrade to their roll carts, you could go to our website, and again, we have improved our website because again, the whole purpose that we're trying to do is we're trying to see how can the sanitation division help you, how can we make it more efficient for you as a resident, how can we respond to you in a timely manner. So we have gone in and we've made some major changes to our website. So if you're requesting if you got a 35-gallon blue recycling cart, you would like a 65-gallon, no issues. Go to our website, the information is out there, and you can make that payment online. If you're requesting a new service, all that information is available on our website also. And so, but we are so excited to introduce the new portal for our bulky items. We're hoping that that is going to help our residents, and then, of course, we want to make sure that we're trying to be as responsive as we can to our residents. So some final thoughts. You know, we just want to thank the residents for their patience and their understanding. We know that this pandemic has been, you know, really hard on everyone. As the sanitation department is out there working, we are experiencing a high volume of calls through our call center. So we're just asking everyone for, you know, for their patience and their understanding. We're not a perfect department, but we are a department that are here to serve. We are a department that provides a needed service, and we completely understand that. And so, but at the end of the day, the sanitation department, we're here. You could count on us to get the job done.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Oh, and thank you so much. As you were speaking, there was a question that came in from Ms. Shirley Hill, and her question was related to missed collection days for recycle containers and leaf bags and yard debris. She indicated there were misses of these containers today and 2 weeks ago. Can you speak to whether or not there has been challenges out there with the collection of recyclables? I'm glad you spoke as to yard debris, because I get a lot of those emails from you all, from my constituents, concerning yard debris. And and I don't think a lot of people understand that there is a fee and how to go about ensuring that this is done expeditiously, because when those trucks pass it, that's when they say, well, they came and they didn't take it and they've left it out here 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm glad you spoke to that, because there is a process. But, you know, to your knowledge, has there been any reason why we would not have picked up recycled containers, leaf bags, and yard debris?
I mean, no, to be honest with you. I mean, you know, as I said earlier, I mean, sanitation, we do experience some issues with our fleet, and we do experience attendance issues, but at the end of the day, we stay out there late and we try to go out there and we try to get the service done. Yard debris is basically education to the residents. There is a protocol for yard debris as far as it to be cut in certain lengths, how it's, you know, stacked at the curb, and biodegradable bags. So if that protocol is not followed per the residential collections standards or procedures, that's considered a pay pile. And so pay piles are where the grappler truck comes out, and it's a minimum charge of $50. All those instructions are on our website also. And those instructions, again, you could go out there. Wood debris, somebody take down a fence. Wood debris is considered construction demolition. That's a pay pile. A lot of times it's just based on education as to what is included in that residential assessment fees and then what are pay piles. But the yard debris, you are correct, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson. That is a big one, and it's really just education.
Right. And you know, we've had some conversation on what we can do to educate folks and what we need to do to be consistent, so that they do not believe, you know, as constituents, because sometimes, you know, we've had instances where they will dump containers that aren't approved by the county. And then when they show up the next week and they're not doing it, it creates ambiguity. When we need one set of rules, we need to follow those rules as we move forward. But I thank you so much, because there's never anything that I've called anyone that is present tonight to assist with that has not happened. So Ms. Shelley, if you find that there is an issue, then please reach out to my office and we're more than happy to help. And at this time, in the spirit of getting through the presentations, we are now going to move to Mr. Damon Scott, who is in charge of Human Services, and allow him to speak as to his presentation. Mr. Scott has under his purview both youth services as well as senior services. And thank you so much for joining us this evening, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. I appreciate it, my fellow Leadership DeKalb classmate. And at this time now, I'll go through our presentation that we put together specifically for this town hall. So thank you. Now I'm going to exit the video, but I'm going to keep it on. All right. One of the things that Human Services has remained focused to our services and commitment to the families of DeKalb. And what is not largely known is that whether rain, shine, sleet, or snow, we had a case management response that went into homes of the most vulnerable. And we had senior center management that acted as first responders. And something as well that I consider to be a first responder response is the efforts of our fiscal team and finance that are able to draw down state dollars and in some cases federal dollars and get them in. And with your help, Commissioner, and the other commissioners approving these funds, so we can then turn those around and provide critical services to the families. One of the first steps that we did in response to COVID-19 was planned outreach. We know how difficult it can be oftentimes where there's information scattered all over the place and families, communities, nonprofits, concerned citizens don't have one place where they can go to find out what's going on and receive updates. So the things we started doing was putting together COVID-specific newsletters and resource guides for senior services, for youth services. And then we did hard copy mailings out to individuals and different organizations in DeKalb to make sure that the private communities and the public would have access to these newsletters and resource guides, and we have those available that we can resend. We've also conducted a lot of outreach to our nonprofit and our healthcare partners. In the building where my office is located, there's a federally qualified healthcare center where we have referred those that need critical medical services there, and also to other entities like Wesley Woods and Emory Hospital and Grady that we have worked with over the past year on different initiatives. And then we have an Office of Partnerships and External Affairs. So if anybody is interested in developing a new program or has a concept about a pilot program with something from where you sit, we can entertain that conversation and figure out how we can make that happen in a very planned and responsible way. Next slide, please. So one of the things is a program for seniors. And I would like to say thank you to Darryl Blackwell and team in their efforts. And going backwards to our resource guys, I also want to say thank you to Latasha Williams and Chiquita and John Quill of my team, who did a tremendous effort to make that stuff available. But underneath our senior programs for seniors, we made sure we were probably the first, if I'm not mistaken, senior services provider to begin staggering our closings of our senior centers and developing a response to make sure that our seniors could shelter in place and receive meals at their home. So we began delivering meals to every senior that was a member of our senior center at their home where they could shelter in place, and we got their caretakers involved. We also, for our homebound clients who were not members of senior centers that receive additional services at home, we made sure that they continue to get their meals as well. And we not only did daily meals, we did shelf-stable meals, which expand beyond 6 months, because we know that the pandemic wasn't going to be immediate, to make sure our seniors continue to be fed. We also continued our in-home personal care services, and that is a really a heavy lift in some respects, because that involves certified nursing assistants, and they assist our seniors with homemaker services and activities of daily living and things to make sure that our seniors don't have to come out the house and that they can continue to shelter in place and be safe. And the team has done an amazing effort in that respect. And then, and collectively since March, we've delivered over 50,000 meals and handled all types of situational emergencies and within human services to make sure that families have food. Next slide, please. In that space, now that the seniors are home and now that they're not at the senior centers, we realize that that can have an impact on social and emotional well-being, which is a critical part of remaining safe and not making bad decisions and not following CDC guidelines. So we had to figure out a way to institute and implement things so that our programming could continue. And so with the effort of our Lou Walker Senior Center and our Central DeKalb Senior Center, we began moving virtual classes online that our seniors can participate in. And I want to say thank you to CIO John Matowski and the IT team for that as well, because they've been very integral with us moving to this virtual platform. And again, the senior link line, if there are any questions about anything related to a senior, how they can be assisted, I have an information and assessment team that are answering the phones between the hours of 8:30 and 5 p.m. And that number is 770-322-2950. Again, senior link, anything related to seniors, 770-322-2950, and somebody will help you. Next slide, please. Another service that Human Services continue to provide during COVID-19 and prior, we do about over 30,000 medical trips for seniors and dialysis trips, which are critical appointments that could not stop. That's considered an essential service. So we can continue that. And we also added on the layer of wellness checks to make sure that of those that were riding the human service transportation, and in some cases, modern mobility, that the information was coming back to human service so we could plug them into additional needs as they arose. So it just wasn't just a trip. It wasn't just going from point A to point B, but it was also assessing about whether or not there was a food insecurity issue or there was another service that was needed. And we have continued those critical services for medical transportation and dialysis trips during this time. We also worked with MARTA in a partnership to use the human services transportation to get seniors and other critical persons to food pantries where MARTA had stoppage of routes due to budgetary constraints and lower ridership. And we used and supplemented our transportation to get families to food pantries during this COVID-19 pandemic in Dunwoody and in the Telco Hills community. Next slide, please. A concept that I'm extremely excited about, and I want to thank Betty Davis and Jay Sean Williams and the Youth Services team and CIO Metalski and his team, is the concept of the virtual village. What we know is that during COVID-19, that social lives and services and things for our youth have basically been stopped and put on hold. And we know that things cost money, families are stretched. And so this concept of a virtual village allows the Human Services and our Youth Services team to partner with our other internal organizations like the library, WorkSource, DeKalb, Parks and Recreation, and our nonprofit entities, and have the programs in a one-stop shop underneath this virtual village that families across the county can access for free. And the website is www.dekalboys.org. And the resource guide for youth is also located in this area for anything, any questions related to youth and programming. It is there. But I will encourage families, and Commissioner, I could really use your support to help families take advantage of it, because there's some amazing programs that are really here in this space. For example, there's a program for when we think of youth, we always think of teens, but there are also populations that are infants and toddlers and 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds that have needs. And so we have a program that called the Baby Box that's providing resources to expecting parents to reduce sudden infant death syndrome through age 0 to 5. We have another program that assists this 0 to 5 population that is helping teaching new and young parents healthy techniques to raising their babies. We have Parks and Recreation's virtual summer camp program on there. We have Girls Clubhouse, which is a social and emotional well-being program targeting teenage girls between ages 6 and 14. Another wellness programming for boys and young ladies between 6 and 14 with mental health services for youth. And then other fun things like Chess for Success, where kids can learn how to play chess, and reading comprehension, which I'm sure parents want to make sure that kids don't slide during the summer months, and other different arts and crafts, and even homemade film. And for the musical minds and video and the arts and techie kids, there's something there for them. So there's 30 free programs, because through our gap analysis, what we learned is that children and youth in DeKalb County had trouble accessing other programs due to transportation, having a caregiver available, and or the cost of the program to attend. But this is free. And we want to make sure that everybody is aware of that and they know. And then to address the technology divide, because now the schools are closed, not every child is going to have a cell phone or a Chromebook or a tablet or iPad. Well, what we partner with the group called Power Learning for Technology that's helping us to bridge the gap to make sure the kids are able to access these programs online. Next slide, please. One of a great initiative that came by way of the United Way of Atlanta and Vanessa Rousel, who serves DeKalb and in this effort, we were able to partner with the United Way of Greater Atlanta and distribute 42,000 meals over 10 weeks and got our nonprofits and food pantry providers involved to help us distribute meals that came from an organization and a donation called Gate Gourmet. So I was very happy that the BOC was able to approve this initiative for us, because 42,000 meals is a significant deal when we know that food insecurity is a priority and families are having difficulty and or challenges accessing the type of food and the nutrition that they need during the pandemic. Next slide, please. Lastly, and we're also in the process of our Human Services grants program. That's not COVID-19 specific or related per se, but it is a grants program that also addresses different categorical areas and other needs that are happening within the communities that our nonprofit organizations and community partners are able to apply for. And our grants range from $10,000 to $20,000, and it deals with everything from victim assistance to advocacy groups to literacy, all immigrant special needs to some immigrant populations, and there's a scope of services that range from from infants to literally end of life. And so the Human Services Grant Cycle is electronic. It's on our webpage. Any nonprofits or community organizers or those, especially now, where we see so much is going on in the communities and there's such a great community need. The proposal should reflect that, and we're very excited about it being accessible and electronic on our webpage. And I want to thank Lisa, Annette, and Jason Warner and IT that helped us get this transition from a paper environment to an electronic environment. And we're expecting a great response from our nonprofit community to make sure that they get funding to make sure that we can better serve the communities. Next slide, please. And so, staying connected. If there's any question related to Human Services Administration, we have the number there, 404-270-1178. I provided the number before for a senior link line. And then right below that is the Office of Youth Services. And then our website. You can go to the county website, and right underneath, I think, Human Resources, you will find Human Services. And then here's the listing of our website, which has this information. And most, if not all, of the resource guides should be on there, but definitely the virtual village for the youth is on there. And I will double check to make sure that the other resource guides are on there and are accessible for anybody's use. And I want to say thank you, and thank you, Commissioner, for the opportunity to let you know exactly what we're doing during COVID-19.
Oh, thank you. And to all of those who are watching that have nonprofit organizations, just don't forget that Human Services has quite a few grant opportunities through their office. You can always reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to bridge you to any resources that are available. And at this time, we have only 2 speakers left. So we are rushing to get through here by the 7:30. And we are now going to have Mr. Hardy, Mr. Tim Hardy. And of course, Mr. Hardy is in charge of beautification code enforcement. And he and I probably spend more time together than most. So at this time, if we can bring up Mr. Hardy. And I know that you have sent over slides. Yours were received after the presentation was assembled. So if you will tell us what document you're speaking to, Allison will cue that up so that we are able to present whatever the material is that you desire to have here tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate you having me on here as well, so I can kind of give an explanation of what we're doing during this emergency health pandemic. The first slide that I want to speak to is our brochure, Code Compliance Administration, Property Maintenance and Zoning.
Okay, so if we'll bring that up, and if you will, you know, we could be a little interactive here because I deal with you so much. I feel like I'm in code enforcement because the majority of the calls that you receive are, for the most part, code enforcement. During this time of season, you know, we tend to have high grass. We have cars that want to park on grass, and that's a no, no, no. Immobile automobiles. You know, are you going to share with us the most common code violations? And also, I've had a lot of questions, and that may fall under sanitation though, as to roadside services during this time, and whether or not, which we do know that your office is not working at full capacity. So I'll let you take it over, but please be sure to answer those questions within the context of the discussion for the people.
Yes, ma'am. And to answer your first question, yes, I will talk about the most commonly found violations. It's part of the brochure that you're viewing on the screen now. Some of the violations that you just spoke to are what we call the low-hanging fruit. That's the high weeds and grass, open storage, that's trash that's found on the properties, parking of vehicles on unpaved surfaces, parking in the grass or on the dirt, unregistered vehicles, vehicles that don't have current tag, decal, or registration. Vehicles that are in some state of disrepair or dismantled. All of those are frequently found code violations. We get a lot of calls about parking of commercial vehicles in residential areas. That's a clear code violation. Vacant and unsecured properties are a big part of what we do. Those are the type of violations that lend directly to health and safety issues, particularly if that property is open and accessible. People within the community can gain access and do all kinds of things in those properties. So we deem those very high on the totem pole. We also enforce the zoning regulations. We are de facto the enforcement and regulatory arm for the county for all of the code of ordinance. And that's everything from building without a permit to operating a business in the wrong area. And that speaks directly to our zoning enforcement. We have some special operation units as well. Our hotel, motel, and our multifamily units are one of our proactive arms that we lean on quite often to deal with violations in those areas for apartments and hotels and motels, some of the extended stay but temporary housing that some of our folks find themselves in. We've recently started our commercial corridor enforcement team. That's another proactive enforcement arm that deals directly with commercial businesses along some of the major corridors. We started that program back in August of 2018. We have since inspected all of Memorial Drive and Candler Road. We are currently in the middle of inspecting Glenwood. That has been scaled back some now with COVID-19 and our skeleton crews, that we call it, that we're enforcing with. We started out with about 32 to 38 officers in the field when we initially went out on the emergency leave. We felt that we ran the risk of exposing all of our officers at the same time. So one of the things we did is we started to rotate teams. Now we have about 7 or 8 people that are out in the field daily, and those teams rotate. So if somebody does get sick or is exposed, we don't lose our whole enforcement staff. What we do now is we look at some of what we call mission critical type inspections. And if Allison, if you could bring that slide up, that's our mission critical staffing plan. And what we did is we listed what we consider highly hazardous or health and safety type inspection requests. And those range from unsafe building and structures, unsafe equipment that are danger to the public, rooming and boarding houses where some of our seniors or some of our mental health citizens live. If we find that there's some sanitation problems or some dangers there in those structures, we put those high on priority. Sewer leaks, any kind of contamination or unsanitary conditions on private property is another item that we would place on our critical list. Water intrusion, making properties uninhabitable for the residents. Building without a permit. We find that a lot of this has popped up lately. And maybe it's because, you know, some of the citizens think we're not out there in full force, or if they didn't know we're not out there in full force. But this is a direct impact on the quality of life, particularly in the neighborhoods where it's happening. So we deem that very important as well. And again, closing the vacant structures, making sure that any of those structures that are vacant and accessible get some prime attention from our staff. Another focus, Commissioner, is we provided, if you would, Allison, could you go to the important numbers list? Inherently, code enforcement, we get a lot of calls. Not all of them are directly related to code violations. So what we developed is a important phone list, and it ranges anywhere from fire department, police emergency, animal control, housing authority, any of those agencies that may have some other type of regulatory compliance responsibilities. We'd like to be able to give our citizens those numbers so they can contact those agencies as well. And I know that there were a couple of questions that were submitted prior to. I don't know if you want to get into that right now. Certainly we can, or if you have something else.
Let's keep it moving along. There were a few, there's always some for code compliance. So let me go down here. And in the spirit of time, good people, I'm just going to read through these. And the first is, I would like to know what actually happens when homes are reported for violating code standards. Please explain the process. I think I could do that, but I'm going to let you do that.
Okay, and real quick, if we could go back to the brochure. On the inside of the brochure, it says code enforcement process. Now, there are only 5 steps that's listed in the brochure. And it starts with where the complaints are received. And then the code enforcement officer, the code enforcement staff will do an investigation. Once we determine that there actually exists a violation, well, then we'll start an enforcement action. If that enforcement action does not produce compliance or a resolution of that reported violation, then we issue citations. That takes the violator into court, and that court process involves the DeKalb County Solicitor's Office. You're given a calendar court date and allowed to present your side of the story, of course, present your case. The code enforcement officer presents their case. We have an extensive case file that we usually build up on each violation that's reported. And from there is usually some resolution. Sometimes that resolution is the property's in compliance. They pay a fine, sometimes a minimal fine. Sometimes it can be an escalated amount. But for the most part, those properties are typically in compliance at that time. Now, that doesn't mean that the violation won't return at some point. Sometimes we get to that point and the violation is still there. And usually the solicitor will enter into some type of consent agreement with the violator or reset the case to give them a chance to actually comply. Now, between those 5 steps, there are a lot of variables, meaning from the time you get the complaint to the time the violation is actually investigated, there could be additional violations on the property when you get there. Between the time you issue the citation and actually get to court, the violator may move and we may have to deal with the property owner. So sometimes we have to kind of reverse and start over again based on the person or the responsible party that we have in front of us. So that's the code enforcement process in a nutshell.
And one other question that popped up that I just saw is, how long are people given to comply? Now, one of the things that we've encountered, because I will give you credit in that I am seeing us process and hold people accountable. And it's a shame that we spend any taxpayer dollar on code compliance, and particularly litter, because it just makes no sense. That comes from folk who don't take pride in their own communities. But I know that right now there's a backlog because we have not been actively bringing people into court that have been, that are already at the point of adjudication. So would you please speak to that for me?
Well, you make a good point. We have a backlog of cases as well as a backlog of citations that are waiting to be heard in court. That's one of the things that gives our ordinances teeth, is the court process itself. As we know, we probably won't be having any cases to come to court before July 13th, I think is the date. And then we're gonna have to deal with those that were already in court that have not been adjudicated yet. A standard notice of violation allows the responsible party about 15 days to comply. And that 15 days is just a standard. It's not something that's written in stone. We like to, or we prefer to give a violator reasonable time. Sometimes reasonable time is 15 days. And in my estimation, sometimes reasonable time is 2 days. It just depends on the nature of the violation and how egregious it is. But the standard time is 15 days. Now, if you have a sewer leak and it's causing a problem inside and outside the house, then you're probably only going to give you 24 hours to get it done. That doesn't mean you'll be in compliance in 24 hours, but that's the time period we would allow before we would move to citation or escalate the enforcement action.
Okay. And that said, I'm going to give you one more question and we're going to move along. This particular question relates to the rundown storefronts. And in all honesty, you know, there's a few things here because whomever sent this question, I feel your pain. I'm going to read it and then we're going to figure how and who best to answer. What are we going to do about all the closed and rundown storefronts on Candler and Flat Shoals Parkway? Shouldn't businesses that have been in business for years have to upgrade to a modern appeal to meet code standards? A beautification effort should take place across South DeKalb because Black-owned communities are more likely to be hit hard by economic downturns than other communities, to the tune of -43% when compared to similar majority communities. Also, there are too many gas stations, which add to the devaluation of our communities. I know that the next person up that we have, and I'm not going to have you answer that, because you know what I have experienced since walking in the office. I believe last year we demolished over 200 structures.
Yes, ma'am.
What I want everybody on this call to understand is a property doesn't get to the point of detriment that needs demolishing in a year or 2 or 5. What we were dealing with are omissions from 10, 15 years. And I will say in a forthright way that in my opinion, there was an omission on the part of someone, because how did you get to this point? If we are actively citing you and holding you responsible for the upkeep of your property. So sometimes, you know, you have to go back to go forward. And there has been a very aggressive push. We have now done sweeps all along Wesley Chapel and Memorial Drive. I've had people say, no one ever said this to me before, but you're saying it now, Mr. Hardy. I can't speak for others and when conversations started to take place, but the communities are changing and there is a lot of work to be done. I have you, Mr. Andrew Baker, on the call, and you are the Director of Planning and Sustainability. And, you know, recently we visited a new structure that is off Claremont, very close to the governor's mansion. And we are attempting to be creative as we move forward in how we have the ability to redevelop properties here in South and unincorporated DeKalb. So I look forward to making some great announcements in that area as we move that ball forward. But at this time, Mr. Baker, I would like to hear from you. Let's cue up your presentation. And Mr. Hardy, there's never a lack of concerns about code compliance. So near the end, if we have time, we will revisit 2 remaining questions, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Baker, I do believe you have a full presentation. So Allison, if you will move into that presentation.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share information about the Planning and Sustainability Department. Again, my name is Andrew Baker and I am the director. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as you've mentioned, COVID-19 has made government have to rethink how we provide services. And our office has been closed for about 12 weeks at this point. And we had no idea that we would be working remotely for this amount of time. And so what we've had to do is to make sure that our staff is aware of the CDC guidelines and to make sure that we follow those, because our department actually is one of the departments that is very much front-facing. What we do, it has a lot of public contact on a day-to-day basis. So we've certainly had to readjust how we provide services to the citizens of DeKalb County. Next slide, please. And so our department actually does a couple of things. We do long-range planning, we do current planning, we also do development services, and we issue business licenses and alcohol licenses as well for anyone within unincorporated DeKalb County. Next slide. When I talk about those services, we, from the planning standpoint, we are mandated by state law to provide a vision for how we want the county to grow. And so we work closely with other departments also to do transportation planning on transit. And there's a lot of talk about expansion of MARTA. So we're definitely involved with those discussions. With current planning, if you're aware, we always have zoning hearings and special land use permits and historic preservation and subdivisions. And so I know a lot of people think that if I own my property, then I have the right to develop that property as I so choose, but that is not the case. And so there are rules and regulations in place as it relates to zoning and those and so forth. And so that next bullet there deals with public involvement. Anytime a person owns property and they determine they want to rezone it to something else, to do something else, we are used to having public meetings where everybody come down to the Maloof Auditorium. We post signs on the property, and we have a community council meeting. We have a zoning board of appeals meeting, planning commission meetings. And so we're used to people coming together to discuss those issues. And so that has been a major challenge for us because, as you know, no more than 10 people are supposed to gather together in a place. So next slide, please. Also in the development services, we have a major challenge as well. It's because for any work that you're doing to your building, to your home, building a deck, the electrical work, plumbing work, then we actually have to review those plans and then also go to your establishment, to your property, to your home and inspect that work. Well, we can't do that if the virus is running rampant. So we've had to change the way we do that, as well as business licenses. So what I'm going to do is to show you some before and after pictures as far as what we've had to change as a result of the virus. Next slide, please. So one of the first things we did was we updated our website. And we tried to make it user-friendly by saying, if you have a zoning question, all you have to do is click that picture that has the zoning stuff on it. If you have a permits question or an inspections question, all you have to do is to go to that particular graphic illustration. And then we have a list of the online forms that we've changed so that you can fill them out online. We have e-permitting that we've established if you want to submit a permit. We had to make a list of phone numbers of people to contact or email addresses. And you can also schedule inspections online too. So we had to update our website so that we could be more customer friendly. Next slide. Again, this is what we were doing before the virus. As you can see, a crowd of people right next to each other. We can no longer do that. So we've had to change the way we do our meetings and so forth. And the next slide, please. And exactly what we're doing tonight is exactly what we've had to do with all our meetings. Thanks to IT and John Metelsky and his group and DCTV, we've been able to actually have the meetings, Zoom meetings, to have public participation. So all of us are learning. This is an actual planning commission meeting. And so all these are people that are calling in and they're having their say about a proposed rezoning. During that time. And again, we just had to utilize technology to be able to have public meetings since we can't have them in person anymore. Next slide. One of the other things we did was you could go to our website, and if you have a question about the zoning of your particular property, all you have to do actually is input your address or the subject address that you're curious about. And the computer has several layers on it and can give you a lot of information about the zoning, the future land use, if it's in an overlay district or whatever. And so there's maps that actually show that. We were one of the first jurisdictions actually to have a digital zoning map, but also our zoning code is on the website as well. So you can also always check what are the setbacks, what is the building heights, how many parking spaces are required. So all of that is on our website. Next slide. This is a picture of our lobby. As I said, we're a front-facing department in operation. People come to our offices and we had chairs in a lobby, and you go to the window and you actually talk with one of our clerks, and you either are doing a land disturbance permit or a building permit or electrical permit. From a planning and zoning standpoint, you go to the windows and you talk about the zoning applications and the zoning cycles and so forth, and we no longer can do that. Next slide. One of the things that we did was we placed bins in the lobby of the building so that you could actually drop off your paper forms, applications. If you did not go online and make applications, you still have the opportunity to drop off those items. We also made sure that we gave all our, not all, some of our employees county issued cell phones, and we gave them laptops so that they could still be able to respond to some of our concerns, the customer's requests, and assist all our customers. What we found with the opening up of the county and the state by the governor, that things are really picking up, and we're having a challenging time keeping up with the number now of the calls and emails that we're getting. Next slide. Another thing, again, we've done is we do have e-permitting, so you can submit your permits via line by utilizing our system. Next slide. And we also have virtual inspections. So if you are feel that you're ill or you don't want one of our inspectors to come to your home or your business, we actually will allow you to use your iPhone for certain types of inspections, and you can show us the work that has been done, and we can comment by using FaceTime as well as using your iPhone to do virtual inspections. So we've had to utilize technology. We also allow for third-party reviews, so that if we tend to get behind, you also have an option of hiring a third-party contractor to also come in and do work for you as well. Next slide. And so with that, that's basically what we've tried to do, is to continue to offer our services from planning, zoning. We're practicing the 6-foot distancing. We've got gloves. Some of our team members have face masks, and we're definitely using hand sanitizers. We're just definitely trying to follow the CDC guidelines, but we definitely are open virtually for business to assist you with anything from business licenses, alcohol licenses for your businesses, as well as any zoning participation for SLUP, special land use permits, as well as inspections and permits for home construction. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Commissioner.
Yes, and Mr. Baker, I believe that the question as it relates to how do we go about changing the face of DeKalb as businesses renew business licenses and bringing them forward with a new and modern look. Is that a question that you are comfortable speaking to?
Well, I think there's a combination of people that are involved with that. One is we have a new international property maintenance code that Mr. Hardy's group has been working on. What we've done when a company comes to try to renew their licenses, we've actually flagged some of the businesses to say, have we got a lot of complaints about the way those businesses look? Has the code enforcement issued a citation on it? So when it's time to renew the licenses, we check the system to see if there have been issues in terms of the sign or the building conditions and stuff, and we can hold up the renewal of that license. What we're also trying to do is to work with other departments such as community development. Alan Mitchell will be talking next, where they do have some programs to assist, so I'll let him talk about that. And again, as you mentioned, we had an opportunity to visit a site over in Atlanta where they've come and they're better utilizing an existing gas station, has come up with some ideas. I had a conversation with the architect for the local Debra pilot project here today. And so we look forward to moving forward and announcing some ways that we can improve the look of the businesses in our corridors. And so I look forward to working with that with Commissioner Cochran-Johnson.
Absolutely. And Mr. Hardy, I know that you're still here. Is there anything that you would like to add as it relates to us moving forward and assisting? Because of course, Mr. Baker, I think you may be last here, but you're certainly not least, because I know that there are monies available in ways we can help businesses. Because you're right, DeKalb County, and particularly South and Incorporated DeKalb, needs a facelift. So Mr. Hardy, do you have any comments that you'd like to add?
Certainly, and I think you're on the right track with some type of economic assistance. What we've found since we've launched our commercial corridor inspection team is that there are a lot of businesses that have been around for a long time along those corridors that have an older facade. have some of the older signs, and from their standpoint, it's all they can do to keep the doors open, maintain the property. And some of them don't do a great job with that, and we have to push them along a little bit. But they hesitate to change the facade of the building, to do a lot of construction to the building itself, because one, they don't have the resources to do it. So they do the bare minimum. They'll put some paint on it, you know, make sure that it stays clean. But more importantly, some of those businesses that are in the overlays that Mr. Baker mentioned earlier, once they pull a permit, that triggers the overlay if they're what we call legal non-conforming. So if they make some major changes to that building, then they have to come into compliance with the current standards, and that can be costly.
I agree. And this leads us nicely into Mr. Baker's presentation. And Allison, I just want you to chime in and confirm, because sometimes my notes get off. But
Mr. Mitchell is next.
Mr. Mitchell, and that is our last presentation of the evening, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, Mr. Mitchell, I will let you come on in and share with people what you do. You can follow your slides as you like. Give us a condensed. We're here for whatever you want. And thank you for taking your time out to be a part of this town hall.
Thank you, Commissioner. And it's always good being with you in particular, as well as my team members, Andrew, Zach, Tim, Reggie, Damon, Tracy, and Debra, DeBerry, whom I've known for years. So it's always good to be with our team members because we chat and interface a lot. So tonight I'd like to cover two things. We have the Community Development Department, and we are fundamentally open for business. However, we are working remote, have been, as all of us have indicated earlier, trying to provide services to DeKalb County. I will cover two presentations very quickly, and I'll distinguish the two. One is 8 pages, and I'll go through them fairly quickly, which talks about the program initiatives and also services that community development provides with the use of federal funds, because we're blessed to be able to implement the programs using HUD funds that are approved by the board and the administration, and we've given us responsibility to be effective stewards of implementing programs which vary each year to use the HUD funds that we get in. And we thank Congress and others for having gotten those funds into DeKalb County. The other presentation that I have is a 6-page presentation which covers recent announcement for citizens assistance programs to be implemented by a nonprofit. Stated differently, with the CARES funding, we had a resolution passed by recommended by Commissioner Rader and approved, of course, by the board, including you, of course, Commissioner Johnson. And so therefore, we've been able to launch today that program with all the attributes of trying to have nonprofits apply through a portal that we established thanks to IT with John Metelsky and his team to help us to be able to allow individuals to implement the program. So individuals will receive funding from the CARES Act, but it will be administered through a series of nonprofits that have to be applied through a portal. And we're responsible for helping the county to implement that program. So those are the two presentations I'll cover. So the first slide would be in the services and program initiatives that we have. And I'll talk very quickly about what community development does. So Allison, if you could go to the next slide. And anything I cover will be backed up by a contact list in the back. I've got a delineation of our staff, the key team members on my team that will be able to help you, and hopefully we can get these out in the public domain, but their telephone numbers and names, of course, that you can address for anything I cover tonight if you have questions. So of the many things we can do, the first thing I'll put up is the fact that we provide the DeKalb Small Business Loan Program, which allows individual businesses, so there are business owners out there, to apply for loans. We've covered that in previous presentations, but it starts at about 15 and goes up to about 35. There's a typo there, not 10, there's 15 to 35. And that's been a very effective program to help businesses. In addition, we also have a training component, which is called the DeKalb County Micro Enterprise Training Program, where we have startup businesses as well as businesses that are renowned, that have been in business for a long time, that need some tooling, some focus on their initiatives to be able to bring more profits to their businesses. Both are administered through a contract with Urban Lake, and we've been very happy to have had them on board with us for a couple of years. The next program we offer is something that's very unique, but hard to explain to most people because it's a term that most don't understand and very few people use it. And that specifically is the HUD Section 108 program. That's a program where we've been able to leverage county funds by being able to borrow at low interest rates and long terms for repayment for the use of capital projects. And I'll get to those later, but we've been able to build a number of the senior centers using funding from HUD, as well as other projects that are considered to be eligible under that arena. To date, we've actually borrowed about $21 million from HUD using CDBG as a leverage factor, but we still have a huge credit line that we use. And we put together an underwriting procedure to allow individuals to explore economic development, other public facilities, and housing initiatives. And for those that are interested in those things like that, you can always apply and work with us to be able to pull that off. But that's the service that we provide for underwriting of those fairly large things. We wanted a few jurisdictions in the state of Georgia or otherwise that being able to explore HUD's offering of this program. So we get references constantly from around the nation to help them acquire funding through this program. The other program that we have, we still implement, even though there's COVID in place, but we've modified it to accommodate seniors. And that is called specifically the Special Purpose Housing Repair Program. We spend up to $10,000 for our precious seniors to do mechanical, electrical, plumbing, as well as roofing. And we've relegated our programs to spend primarily roofing contractors, get them in business to avoid going into the homes of seniors at this juncture. And we still have an active program where we actually accommodate people 62 and above or legally handicapped to help them with issues that they might have with coming into compliance with our code requirements and having issues with their housing. But that's a program that people can apply to. We open the window for applications at points in time. We take huge applications, then we shut it down. But it's still an active service we provide to the DeKalb County citizens to help you get your home in better shape. No additions, but just bringing you up to code so that you can be in compliance. So with that, we'll proceed to page 3, Allison. The next area is something that was alluded to by both Commissioner and my good buddy Tim Hardy about demolition and blight. We are members of the Blight Task Force. And with that, we work as a team across law, planning, sustainability, code enforcement, of course, GIS, and a number of individuals that help us, public safety, et cetera, to implement the CEO's initiative to remove blight in DeKalb County. And as you can imagine, being citizens of DeKalb County, we like to have our county look beautiful. And so to that extent, we participate in a joint effort continually. And to date, we've actually abated, when I say we, not just me, but we collectively have been able to abate or demolish, since CEO Thurman has been on board, about 456 properties. We have a demolition scheduled for Stone Mountain on Monday at 10 o'clock, and that would make it roughly 457 of properties that have been able to abate or foreclose upon. And that's an effort, a team effort. But by doing that, we make DeKalb a better place. It helps with economic development and other initiatives around. And I'm quite sure some of the citizens have called us, but our process allows us to use the in-rem process through code enforcement and the law department. And eventually, community development is on the back end where we actually administer the demolitions of properties using federal funds. So that's a major initiative and a service to DeKalb County that we're proud to be associated with. And we're active, and it's very meaningful to make DeKalb better. The next area that we provide a service to is affordable housing. We have various forms of affordable housing. The most popular one is the multifamily housing projects. We've done a number of these, but I've listed candidly just the last 3 we did. And Candler Road, for example, Sterling at Candler Village, we just recently had a ribbon cutting before the pandemic set. of allowing individuals at Kendall Road to get new state-of-the-art units. We had 170 units in which we invested by providing a loan to a developer to bring affordable housing on board. Followed by that, we had a TOD project, that's the Transit Oriented Development Project in Decatur, and that's Columbia Senior Residence, and that was 92 units. And before that, we had senior residents at Mercy Park up in Chamblee. And I could list many projects like that we've done, but that's the service we provide to DeKalb County to allow individuals to be able to live in place and have a state-of-the-art unit to live in, and it's affordable with an ability to be proud of being able to still live in DeKalb. So we get great pleasure out of being able to do the multifamily projects within DeKalb County by using HUD funds. Also, we have what's called CHODOs, Community Housing Development Organizations. They acquire rehab and dispose of properties with down payment assistance to give individuals an ability to get mortgages by giving them a down payment along with the primary mortgage they get. And also we have a program which is called Debra. It's tenant-based rental assistance, where we allow people to get apartments that are low income that need help, and we provide assistance to supplementing their rent, which is the key factor within the affordable housing. So those are all services, again, that we provide to our citizens, and we enjoy doing that because it's really helping needy people that we feel good about. There are other programs of this nature, but I thought I'd just cover those three. Allison, will you go to page 4? The next area is an area which is a very sensitive area, I might add. It's called the homeless initiatives. We do a lot in the homeless arena, and I'm quite sure that some of you are aware that we have a homeless problem in DeKalb County. But we do a great job, in my opinion, of being able to use federal funds we've gotten from HUD to take on these programs. We have a homeless hotline, which is 404-687-3500, that individuals call daily. We keep it open 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for individuals that are displaced and need housing and assistance to call us. And we have people on manning lines every day to do this. We also currently have, as a function of COVID, over 90 people, citizens that were homeless, that we were able to place in hotels, 2 hotels, in fact, with the help of the administration, to preempt them from being able to be subjected to unsanitary conditions and also being exposed to the virus. So by doing that, we've been able to provide case management, meals every day, 2 meals a day for about 90 people in 2 separate hotels. And that's been a very successful project to date because people, we're saving lives by doing that. Also, we'll be able to get from HUD additional funding for COVID that we haven't been able to announce, but we will be, hopefully in the near term, putting out announcements about grants to be applied to. We've gotten about $4 million allocated from Congress, specifically for homeless initiatives, but we're waiting on the ground rules to implement those programs, and they should be, hopefully within a couple of weeks, getting out to the nonprofits to let them know that we'll be accepting applications for implementing programs to respond, prevent, and prepare for the pandemic. Also, but on a normal basis, we have allocations in excess of $5 million from HUD to take care of chronic homelessness, which is an ongoing thing we've done. And we do them through homeless prevention and emergency shelters, rapid rehousing, and street outreach. Those are ongoing. So all in all, we do a lot to help our precious citizens that are homeless within DeKalb County. And we're blessed to get the funding from the feds to be able to do that. And in addition, we also get allocations from various commissioners to supplement our federal funds to help us with being able to support our homeless initiatives. Allison, would you go to page 5? The next thing we do is we offer a lot of grants. You've heard grants on the phone, but we also have federal grants we give. We've got probably $1 million appropriated for our plan for 2020 this year, going to the commission, hopefully in about a couple of weeks. And the categories that we give out grants, and they vary in size up to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 per agency. It really depends on the initiatives that they have. But the 5 categories that we use to give grants under have been homeless initiatives, domestic violence, financial literacy, fair housing, foreclosure prevention, and child and youth development. And they're enormous agencies under those subcategories that we give funds to. Again, to help them implement and help needy people within DeKalb County. And so we feel good about the fact that these nonprofits can help us implement the mission of helping DeKalb be a better county. So if you go to page 6. Page 6 also gives us a perspective on something that we spend a large portion of our funding from HUD on. And a lot of you on the phone, I'm always sure, participate and use buildings that have been built by Community Development Department because they're public facilities. And what we do is try to supplement the county funds to implement these projects. The senior centers that have been alluded to have all been built by Community Development. That's the North DeKalb Senior Center, Central, South DeKalb Senior Center, and Lew Walker. We built Lew Walker years ago. We're currently working on District 4 and 7 Senior Center in Elam Road. That's a fairly large project underway, and we're getting ready to have a groundbreaking. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we're ready to start construction on the East DeKalb Senior Center at Bruce Street to replace that center. That's been well overdue, but we're ready to go. We just have to have the CEO sign, as the last individual to sign the contract. We're ready to go on that. But we do a lot to be able to help seniors and citizens to be able to use our facilities by investing funds, federal funds, into public facilities, supplemented by funds that the county will provide. In addition, we do intergenerational centers, Toby Grants, a fairly large project that's under construction. That's a $9 million project in which we got the responsibility to bring on board. We're currently doing civil work. We've done fire stations before. We built the South Police Precinct. We actually were in charge of building Port of Sanford Center. And as you know, that's a community activity where you have probably gone there and enjoy and entertain jazz and various other things and plays that go on at that fine facility. And so a lot of parks and rec activities we fund with federal funds. So there's a host of things we do within the category of public and capital within the county. The next category is that we also work in unincorporated as well as incorporated DeKalb. And incorporated DeKalb, we have an agreement with 9 of the cities to have them come to us for federal funds, which we provide through the application process. So, and that's currently going on today. We have 9 cities that have agreements with us that go through us as opposed to going directly to HUD to get funding. So we're out and about amongst the cities as well, building relationships, trying to help them because they are part of DeKalb County. The other thing we do is we help reestablish the DeKalb Regional Land Bank, and that's currently set in place to do economic development initiatives, blight remediation, and affordable housing. And we're getting close to getting board recommendations to make the land bank a viable tool to be used. And we feel good about that because that's going to help DeKalb County by having a significant land bank as a key tool to, again, implement economic development, blight remediation, and affordable housing initiatives. Next slide, which is 7. As you indicated earlier, we help the cities. We've got listed a number of projects that we help the cities with: Chamblee ADA parking improvements. We got sidewalks that we do across streetscapes. We can actually spend federal funds on helping beautify the various highways and places within DeKalb County. We're working with the city of Clarkston, Chamblee. We are working with FODAC, which is Friends of Disabled Adults and Children, to be able to renovate their facilities with the handicap. So those are some key eligible activities we can do with HUD funds, and we do that on a year-by-year basis. And we're proud and have a lot of good friends in the cities of DeKalb County. One of the last things we want to talk about is NSP, and that's called Neighborhood Stabilization Program. That's a program where we actually acquire foreclosed upon vacant homes that are blighted in DeKalb County. We actually acquire them, rehab them, and dispose of them by selling them to individuals that are low mod. And to date, we've spent about $32 million in that initiative, making DeKalb better, as well as I was equating to about 165 homes. We've got roughly 86 apartment units in Clarkston that we also acquired, rehabbed, and renovated to provide affordable housing. So national, and we still have funds left over for NSP in excess of $4 million that we're trying to spend to be able to close out the programs. But that's, again, an attempt to acquire and rehab houses to make DeKalb a better place because of beautification of communities. So you don't have blighted properties sitting in your neighborhood. We acquire them and have homeowners come in and they become your new family. Not family, but somewhat your neighbors. It will be like family when you get to know them. But we feel good about being able to stabilize communities so you don't have eyesores in your community and your property values in effect go up because there aren't any vacant houses that'll blight it. So in the next page in this presentation is 8, where Allison, you put that up. Those are the contacts that I mentioned earlier of individuals within our department that can help. And you'll get a copy of this, but basically they cover the managers and people that are responsible for things within our department. So I'll end that presentation very quickly unless there are questions on that. And I'll go very quickly to the last one. So the next presentation, and I'll try to speed through this. We announced today in administration, and we're helping the administration be able to pull this program off, which is to announce a COVID-19 grant support program for nonprofits. The deadline for submitting applications is June 24th. The announcement went up today. Effectively, if you look at the purpose, in response to the negative economic impact that the DeKalb County citizens have suffered due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the CAB has allocated through the CARES Fund $1 million to launch nonprofit-based programs to assist residents that have an immediate need for things like overdue rent, mortgage assistance, utility, food, and other unforeseen emergency situations. The funding for the program is coming from the CARES Act that went in place on March 27th, 2020. The program will offer grants to nonprofits up to a max of $100,000, and they will be able to take 20% for the administrative fees, but 80% will go toward citizens that will apply to them directly, not to the county. So the nonprofits apply to the county, and we approve those through a committee joined by individuals from cities as well as the county staff. And they will get citizens to apply to the nonprofits that have been approved by the board to be able to hand the money out to individuals to help them on the aforementioned areas that they have problems with. The timeline is the next page, which would be page 3, which is posted today. Applications to due back on the 24th. There's a link you get with an application, which is a fillable PDF form so that nonprofits can get back to us. And after the 24th, we will evaluate them with a group of individuals from cities as well as the county staff, as stated earlier. The page 4 is very key because those nonprofits that are picked have minimum thresholds to be selected. However, initially, they have to be able to implement the program participant eligibility criteria. Anyone getting funds from the CARES Act will have to be a DeKalb County resident, must receive initial consultation from case managers, must use our HMIS system to have their documentation, cannot receive more than one agency support, and no agency hopping from place to place, must be willing to have things in HMIS, documented job loss, documented furloughing, notice of evictions, whether it be rent and or mortgage being late, and your name must be on the lease or mortgage, and you must have documentation that you have late utility bill, and it must be in your name, or documented emergency situations, and you must receive a COVID training program, which will be administered by a nonprofit. So those are the things that the nonprofit has to effectively do before they issue funds to individuals that apply. And the last page would be the minimum threshold for those nonprofits. Some of you might be on the phone that might want to apply, and they are at a minimum 2 years in business, must be registered and licensed to do business in the state of Georgia. You must have an audit, must have 2 recent financial statements you put together. You must have a copy of the IRS 990 form. And additionally to that, the agency must be have an active independent board that's been in place and have met throughout the year. You must be in good standing with DeKalb County, and you must have a non-discrimination clause. But those documentation and proof of those things must be submitted with your application. And the last page is going to be fundamentally the evaluation criteria, which is page 4, which is meeting the minimum thresholds, the geography, dispersion, how you're going to service DeKalb County citizens, your experience in administering the program, the quality of the application that you submit to the staff, And lastly is how do you apply? On our link on the county website and others, you can go to the web link there and submit a request to apply. If you use that link, you immediately get the application to apply and also a list of the documents you must submit to be able to get the funding. So we feel good about this program. It's in sync with the CEO's initiatives and the commissioner's initiatives to be able to help citizens in DeKalb County. And we feel confident that we're going to get a number of nonprofits to apply to be able to administer the programs to help our citizens. So with that, I'll end with the things that we're doing, Commissioner, and I'll entertain questions.
Okay. I have already seen several people say, how do they obtain this information? I'm glad you shared the upcoming programs where we will disseminate. DeKalb County received $125 million in COVID relief funding. And of course, that money can be allocated in any way we deem necessary as it relates to COVID relief. I believe truly one of the largest portions, and I'm a part of the subcommittee for the COVID-19 task force for business, we recommended $30 million be set aside specifically for small businesses. The CEO will be presenting to us his course of action based on those recommendations next week. But working with the nonprofits to allocate monies as it relates to utilities and for basic services that many individuals have fallen behind on, I feel is a part of local government's responsibility at this time. So, Mr. Mitchell, you are always what I consider an underutilized and underknown resource here in the county. This gentleman knows more about resources than most anyone I've ever met in DeKalb County. And I'm always in awe when I sit with him, because you think if we can only get this information out to the community and people can utilize it. So if you all, anyone who wants the presentation will report to my website at any point tomorrow. We will have it front and center. You will see a link, or all you'll need to do is click on so that you can go through this presentation. You can download it, whatever that's there that you'd like to carry with you, it'll be available to you. I know that we ran a little bit over. In all honesty, there is a lot of conversations that could have been had, and this should have probably been 2 town halls, but I've just had so many people ask, what are you doing at this time? How do we get services? And I have seen some questions that we have not had the opportunity to answer. So that being said, we will field through these questions, and if you will give me until Monday, close of business Monday, because I do have some things in the field tomorrow, we will answer anything that we have not or connect you to the appropriate person. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening, taking time out. I hope that the things you've heard here tonight prove helpful to you. And as always, you can reach me at any time. My email address is lc.johnson@DeKalbCountyGA.gov. And you can always visit our website at www.CommissionerLorraineCochran-Johnson.com. And I will say that due to the massive amount of emails that we're getting right now, I'm not as fast as I've been. Most folk know me as just literally hitting you back within minutes. But you know, if I can get back to you during the course of the day or no less than next day, right now we're doing good because we're getting so many emails. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you to the panelists for staying with us this entire time. You all go and definitely have a good evening and enjoy your families. Let's all be mindful that COVID is still alive. The numbers are alarming. DeKalb County, I can say we're not rising as fast as many of the surrounding counties, but do continue to be very mindful. For those of you who have reached out to my office, I do have masks If you find that you need them, if there are gatherings taking place, I'm more than happy to make donations. Just reach out to us and I will facilitate your needs. And again, thank you all so much for allowing me to serve, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Night.